What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Morello Show, episode number 16. Not doing the fingers. I don't have enough. My name is Kyle Morello, of course. I am your host. Fun fact before we get started, this is the third different state and three different episodes I'm doing a podcast in. So that's pretty cool. We had Michigan, we had PA. Now we're in Delaware at my cousin's house. So there's that. And now joining us, and thank you so much for joining us, is Mets writer Michael Barron. Michael, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, of course. We have a lot to get into. It's officially trade deadline week. Of course, July 30th this year, not the 31st, is on a Friday. And the Mets are in first place. They're 4 up. They've got some things they need to take care of. Of course, they just acquired Rich Hill the other day from the Tampa Bay Rays. But I guess just to get started, right off the bat, Michael, who do you think is potentially next in line for to be coming over to the Mets?
It's a good question. I think I think Rich Hill is a great acquisition. He just, I don't know what happened in the sixth inning. He just stopped getting away with, some of the mistakes he was making third time through the order today. But I still think that's a solid, back end of the rotation kind of move. I mean, I think they're in a tough spot with rotation, in my opinion, because, they don't really know what they're going to get from Jacob deGrom when he comes back, as great as he's been. They don't really know what they're going to get from Carlos Carrasco when he gets back. And you don't really know when they're coming back. I mean, I think Carrasco will be back this week, but you're really only going to get 4 or 5 innings out of him. And again, he's a wild card. He was supposed to be, kind of like Noah Syndergaard, where whatever you get from him is gravy or a bonus. And now they're going to put him right into the rotation, to fill a need. And that's a tough spot to, put a guy in who hasn't pitched in almost a year. So I still think they need, at minimum, starting pitching depth. I don't know where they go and find that. Maybe they can get get a combination deal, a combo deal with the Cubs. Maybe if they can snag Chris Bryant, who they liked in the offseason. They're obviously, that's no secret they're interested in him now. Maybe they can get a pitcher, back end type of pitcher, in that kind of deal. Maybe they can take on some money, which will lower the prospect costs. But I also think, we talked about this before too. I also think they need some late inning relief help, a good swing and miss arm. And the reason for that is not because Edwin Diaz has struggled, not because Trevor May has struggled, or I shouldn't say struggled, has been inconsistent over the course of the season. I think that's a fairer way to term it, but really because of Seth Lugo and his inability to be consistent himself. I mean, we saw it today in the 6th inning. I mean, I know it's a tough spot, bases loaded, nobody out, against a great lineup, and he just couldn't. He's not getting that. He's not really spotting that curveball consistently well. Sometimes he looks like the Seth Lugo of old. Others, like today, he can't get the swings and misses like he normally does, and it's just a product of location with it, and it just hasn't been there yet for him. He had elbow surgery like 4 months ago, 5 months ago, whatever it is. So now he's pitching in major league games. That's not easy. So I'm not discrediting him. I just think he's a work in progress, but they can't. If they're 2 games up or whatever, facing a division rivalry, or they're one of those 13 games against the Giants and Dodgers in August. They're not going to be able to be patient with their pitching, and which is what the trade deadline is for. You stop being patient when you acquire more help. And I think that's an area that, an under-discussed problem, not a problem, an under-discussed area of need, that they can easily address, with an acquisition there. But, I don't think they're going to be able to check all the boxes. It's hard to believe they will. And, even if they do, I mean, I always think back to the 2015 trade deadline when they made all those moves and they all worked out, right? I mean,
Yes.
All of them worked out. That doesn't usually happen either. So it's just because they make a move doesn't mean they're going to come up aces. So and it's a lot to ask when you have this number of this many needs. It's a lot to ask for it to all go right. So, but we'll see what happens. I mean, I think the Rich Hill move is exactly what they needed. It fills a need. Didn't cost them that much, either financially or, with their prospect currency. And I think they're going to be looking to make more moves like that with their pitching, with a bigger investment perhaps in their offense. And I still think, I don't think it's Chris Bryant or bust. I mean, I could see them, perhaps, angling for Javier Baez, who is probably available too. I think Bryant is better for them because I think it creates matchup opportunities, with Conforto in right field. He obviously plays multiple positions. He can play left field, he can play third, right, first base too, if needed. So he's a better fit for this roster. But look, Baez, I think, strikeouts aside, you take Baez any day of the week too. But
Absolutely.
I that's what I'm thinking, but it doesn't mean that's going to happen. I didn't think they would get Rich Hill. I didn't think Rich Hill would be available, to be honest. But
I did not see that coming at all. But I'm very happy because one of the things that's kind of been sprung upon the Mets in the last few weeks is the pitching depth has gone completely to the wayside because David Peterson get hurt. Obviously, Carrasco and Syndergaard haven't been available all year. DeGrom all of a sudden with his lingering various minor injuries, but he's missed probably 6 starts, if not more already.
And
so
you don't know what is awesome as he's been legendary this year, but like you still don't know, and I'm not even talking about his performance. You don't know when he comes back, if how many innings he can throw at any given time and how long he's going to be able to stay out there. I mean, I don't want to say he's got to prove it, but what he's shown this year is, especially, we're talking about arm injuries. So it's not as if they're going to be casual with his situation. You're talking about, arguably the best player in baseball right now. If it's not Mike Trout, it's Jacob deGrom. And he's has this injury baggage with him right now, with his elbow, with his shoulder, and it's all, these things are all interconnected. So they're not gonna, the first day out say 7 innings, 110 pitches,
right.
This is not
And
gonna happen.
you saw that after his first IL stint, and I think it was May or June. They were using him back 5 innings, 6 innings. Like they wouldn't let him really go past that until a little bit further down the line.
And the same could be said with Carrasco, right? I mean, when he comes back, even if he, if he's giving him 5-6 innings, solid, solid on the mound every time out, it's a win. And certainly if they can somehow get Noah Syndergaard back out there, and his situation's extremely delicate because he's I don't want to say fresh out of surgery, but he had surgery last year and had a setback this year. So these are not, you can't expect a lot when they come back. You probably need more than you can expect from these people because they literally have no pitching left. So
no, absolutely.
It's a tough position to be in, but they're in first place. Like today, on Sunday against the Blue Jays, they won perhaps improbably, if that's a word. That was a tough win to scratch out against. I mean, let me tell you, that's an elite offense. And I was talking to somebody during the game about George Springer, and I was saying, it's not even that he's a great hitter, a great clutch hitter. He does things other baseball players can't do. Aside from the personality, all these intangibles that he brings to the table, perhaps the greatest intangible he brings to the Blue Jays and would have brought to the Mets is that athleticism. And his, like I said, he can do things other people can't do. And he was a pleasure to watch. Like that catch last night was just, I mean,
incredible.
You're going to see that for years on, highlight reels. So, but they managed to still find a way to win the series, and this wasn't easy, either, Friday or today. They weren't easy, but they have this character to them that, that's part of their core that they can augment at the trade deadline, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. And, you had mentioned before, not necessarily home run hitting for brain fart for a second. Starting pitching doesn't have to be like a big star. One name that I've kind of seen that might be available is John Gray from the Rockies. Obviously, he's pitching in Coors, so his numbers might be a little bit inflated. Is that potentially an option? Maybe could they package that with Trevor Story if they really want to hit a home run? What do you think?
I don't see them getting Story, to be honest. I mean, I think, Story's heading into his walk year, and I can't see any team who acquires him, moving him from that position. And it's not as if Story wouldn't come here by Friday, and be the Mets shortstop for a while. But it's, what do you do when Lindor comes back? And are you going to give up the prospect currency for someone who's there's probably no chance of retaining him beyond this year, because he's not going to go to free agency as a second baseman or at any other position. He's going to go to free agency as a shortstop. So especially with Seager and, and other guys going like that. Correa going to free agency too.
Yes.
Yeah. So, he's going to, in order for him to be market competitive, like he's got to market him, he's got to sell himself as a shortstop. So I don't see that as a fit for the Mets, but it doesn't mean Gray isn't. I think Gray would be, checks that box, if you will, checks what the Mets need. Again, like they're not going to, probably not going to go for a Scherzer type or, elite starting pitching and give up the prospects, for that. But, Gray would probably come at a lower cost and, probably be serviceable in the role that they need him to be in, if not better. So, and that's really what they need to look for. They need to look for a guy who can be competent and effective and give him innings, because they don't have any of that right now.
No.
Rich Hill helps, but they still, TBA is pitching 2 days in a row, tomorrow and Tuesday. So they still need more help, and immediately. This isn't something that, we can hold out for a couple more weeks. Like the time is now. So I think Gray, I don't even think, even if they got Gray tonight, I don't even think I don't know if he's available either Tuesday or Wednesday, Monday or Tuesday. So, but I mean, that's where they're at though. And I think Gray, I think someone mentioned Tyler Anderson to me of the Pirates. I mean, he's to me more of, that, at the bottom, the
innings eater.
Innings guy. Yeah. I mean, I don't, you look at his peripherals and they're not great. They're not really what the Mets need. I mean, I think the Mets need more, of that John Gray type, who, I get, not John Gray, but, guy who's going to get more swings and misses, right? Because the more contact, the more balls are put in play, the more likely it is damage is going to be done, especially, with this stretch against the Giants and Dodgers coming. Like you need more, swing and miss strategy against them. So I think Gray is at least more established than Tyler Anderson, but I think they'll look at the tier above Anderson, but below, Scherzer, kind of in that, 3-4 kind of space. And I think Gray, certainly would help them. I think that would be a great move. I wouldn't complain about it at all.
I mean, an ace, of course, would be nice, but you can't really expect that when you have the best pitcher in baseball will be eventually coming back from injury. You have an all-star in Taijuan Walker. You have a borderline all-star in Marcus Stroman. Like when they are healthy, that is a phenomenal top three. Now you have Rich Hill, who's had a good season. Yes, he's, outside of this start, he hasn't had some great starts when his last few in Tampa, but he's pitched well. And, eventually Carrasco will come back. So you don't need necessarily a Scherzer, like you mentioned, because, they have the talent. They just need the innings to replicate themselves from the monstrosity of the non-innings that they had in Pittsburgh and those two series.
They need to get healthy. That's the key, right? They need to be healthy and effective. It's two-pronged. And that might ultimately direct their dollars and their prospects towards an elite bat. Because, if they really believe DeGrom can come back and be healthy and be the force that he was and be, the ace and the best pitcher in baseball, et cetera, and Carrasco can come back and be an effective 6-inning guy. Really, that's really what Stroman is. When Walker is right, like that's what he is. And Rich Hill is a, solid, 5-inning guy, really, at this point in his career. That's fair. That's just being fair. Right. They have an elite rotation all of a sudden, but you got to get there. Right. And I think, part of helping DeGrom along and part of helping, Walker through this tough time. And, again, Stroman, they're just not going to let these guys face lineups 3 times through the order. That's where another reliever comes into play. And, they haven't really talked, Zach Scott really hasn't talked a whole lot about the relief market. There hasn't been a lot of buzz about the relief market, but that doesn't mean there isn't a move to be made and that they won't make a move there. I mean, we've seen them, like in 2015, again, like they were so focused on improving an offense. I still will have nightmares over, John Mayberry Jr. and Soup Campbell hitting 3 and 4 against Clayton Kershaw at Citi Field in July.
Remember that. Yeah.
And like I still have nightmares about it. But and then suddenly, like, they bring Addison Reed into the fold, who was like one of Sandy's best moves, he was
elite down the stretch in the playoffs.
Yeah. Right. So I do believe they will eventually be, they're probably quietly perusing the relief pitching market right now. They're this front office in particular now, the way it's evolved, with Sandy as president and these other, they keep their cards close to the vest, and I like that. I don't
I
like
do too.
things getting out, and I can't imagine they do either, which is why they keep things close to the vest. But you don't hear a lot about what their they're what they're interested in, but you're not it's pretty vague. It's always they're very good about keeping these leaks from keeping things from getting leaked out. So
Right. And you mentioned the relievers. Obviously, the big fish probably this year is Craig Kimbrel. He's been arguably the best reliever in baseball. Not that I necessarily see the Mets going after that type, but they very well could. Like you said, they keep things close to the vest. But one name I kind of did hear in the last couple of days, and you had mentioned Tyler Anderson, and this is his teammate, Richard Rodriguez. He's the closer for the Pirates. He's having a decent year, though he did blow a save against the Mets, but happens. You mentioned those two also potentially in a package with Adam Frazier. Is that a direction you could see the Mets going in?
I mean, it's certainly it's of the ilk of the Bryant / pitcher kind of combo deal. I mean, I think Adam Frazier's having a career year. I mean, he absolutely gassed and torched the Mets for a week. Like I mean,
Oh, it was bad.
He's the kind of player. He reminds me of like Jeff McNeil, who when Jeff McNeil's hitting 330, there are no swings and misses, and that's what Adam Frazier is. And like I said, when you put the ball in play, good things tend to happen. So, and another thing you like about Frazier, he's at least this year, he's very well rounded. He's hitting lefties. He's hitting the ball the other way. Not trying, he's going to be your top of the order kind of catalyst, which helps lengthen lineups and puts more runners on for people like Dom and Pete Alonso, JD Davis, and they're big boppers. Michael Conforto, if they can ever get him going. And lengthening the lineups would certainly help people like Michael Conforto. My expectation, though, is that's a plan B, probably because of Michael Conforto's struggles. Because someone like Chris Bryant, don't want to term it as a plan B, but probably second to or a lower preference to something that includes Chris Bryant. And I say that because with Chris Bryant, you can plug Chris Bryant in right field, you can plug him in third base, left field. You can protect. It's not to say you necessarily want to protect Dom against lefties because he's crushed lefties this year, but certainly against Conforto, who's hit like about 150 against lefties. Maybe you slot him in against a tough lefty in a big game or something like that in right field, and have, if you retain JD Davis and JD Davis at third, lose a little defense there, but you still have a righty leaning offense against a tough lefty in a big spot. So I would expect they're interested in Brian in the winter. They're obviously interested in him now. That's probably their white whale of the summer. But he's a lot of teams' white whales. So and the Mets are going to be hard pressed to give up any of their top 5 prospects for anybody this summer. They're not going to do it.
No,
so
I agree.
if the market heats up enough for Bryant, someone might be willing to do that, and at which point the Mets will probably pivot elsewhere, which is understandable. They shouldn't. I'm of the belief in this day and age, you should not be giving up a top 5 prospect for 60 games out of somebody. Just shouldn't do it. The Mets have been burned by that. Were burned by that for years in the 90s and in between 2000 and 2005. So they're trading top talent for rentals, and they're left with neither the rental nor the prospect. So
Unfortunately, that used to happen far too often.
Right, and it's partially why. I mean, I know there were other financial reasons why 2009 through 2014 happened, but it was also a product of not having the prospects to cultivate and move through the pipeline. I say that, and during that time they brought in, they were able to develop Matt Harvey and Jacob deGrom. So what the hell do I know? I don't know what I'm talking about.
Hey, but I mean, it is true. Like they did used to do that a lot. Not necessarily, in the 09 to 14 period, because I think they knew they were bad. But before that, like 07, 08, like, and even in the 90s, like you had mentioned, like they did used to do that. And you still do see teams doing it now, maybe to a little bit of a lesser extent, because I think teams realize that prospects are becoming more of not, I don't want to say more of a sure thing, but the scouting is getting better, I would say, on prospects.
Yeah, and the teams, organizations value prospects a lot more than they did 15, 20, and 25 years ago, right? Perhaps you're seeing a slight swing back, but certainly not in the rental market. And we term rentals as, trade deadline acquisitions who are going to become free agents, right? That's what I view. I don't view necessarily rental of someone who's in like Conforto, if he were to be traded in February, is not a rental to me. I mean, it's just, I think what you get back in return for Conforto with 1 year of control is different than a year and a half or 2 years. But a rental is, I would expect the Mets front office largely agrees with me that is, someone you're getting for 55 to 65 games.
Right.
Right. So, and that's what Bryant would be. That's what I think Frazier would be. I think Frazier's a free agent. I think, Baez certainly, those guys are all rentals right now and just don't want to give up too much for him. And I don't think at least right now, I don't think teams will have to give up that much for him. I can see, someone like Bryant or Baez being worth a 6 to 10 prospect, one, and then maybe a 20 to 30. Certainly, Jose Barrios with the extra year of control may be worth a top 5 prospect plus a 20 to 30. So that, that's the difference. That's what we're talking about. So, but, in 3 months, Barrios is not going to garner, 1 to 5 prospects. So,
right.
If Minnesota wants to get a top prospect for him, they're going to trade him right now,
Which I do think they will. And that's obviously another name the Mets could keep in mind too.
Yeah.
And even there's been the Donaldson package with that too. So that's something to keep an eye on. But I want to get into one more thing real quick. Because we mentioned Noah Syndergaard earlier, and he's supposed to come back around September 1st, around their first week. We'll actually see what happens. He's had a couple setbacks. If and when he does come back, where do you see him fitting in with the team? Because personally, I see him as like a kind of X factor in the bullpen. I don't think he's going to be in rotation, but what do you think?
Well, I guess it really depends on it depends on a lot of things, right? It depends on the health and effectiveness of Carrasco, DeGrom, Hill, and or if they get someone else between now and Friday, right? I mean, those are 4 things that will determine what Noah Syndergaard's role is down the stretch. I think all things being equal, I would agree with you that he can be perhaps that shutdown reliever the Mets need right now in the 8th inning. Here's the problem with that. He's coming back from Tommy John surgery, having one setback significant enough to shut him down for 2.5 additional months, right? He was expected back mid-June. Now we're talking about early September. Is that someone who is going into his free agent year, right? He's going into his walk. This is his walk year. I shouldn't say he's going into his walk year. This is his walk year with a month left, having not pitched in 2 years. Is this someone, they want to risk injury with? Because, if he's going to pitch in the bullpen, he's got to go back-to-back days, right? He's got to be able to do it, especially in September and October. He's just got to do it.
Yes.
Is that something? Are you going to rest your laurels on that? Is he capable of doing that? Is he healthy enough to do that? Like, these are all 3 legitimate questions of putting him in the bullpen. There's been a lot of talk over the years, at least among, the paying customers, of putting him in the bullpen. Maybe he's better suited for the bullpen, especially when early on in his career, when he's struggling, with movement, pitching to contact and stuff like that. When that stuff shouldn't have been pitching that much contact.
Right.
And there's a reason why they never put him in the bullpen, mostly because he was that valuable as a starting pitcher. So I think first you have to see if he's actually going to come back. You have to see, what he's capable of doing when he comes back. You have to see what the state of the starting pitching is when he comes back. Could he be in that role, in that 8th inning role? Maybe you alternate him with Seth Lugo in the 8th inning every other day, and then you don't have to worry about either pitching back-to-back day.
That's actually a good call.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that works, but you still don't know. Even if you do that, you don't know how Noah Syndergaard would recover from, pitching, how Noah Syndergaard would recover from pitching on a Monday with a rest day on Tuesday and coming back on Wednesday. Like, it's a whole different routine. It's not certainly what he's trained to do. Doesn't mean he can't do it, but that's just becomes an unknown. Like, how does he respond to that? Everybody would say, well, Seth Lugo is lights out in the bullpen. We got to put him in the rotation. So they put him in the rotation last year, and he was far from lights out. So, it's easier said than done. I think in all things being equal with that, he's got lights out swing and miss stuff, but I think we'd be kidding ourselves if we thought he's going to be coming out, from this injury throwing 100 miles an hour, consistently anyway. So,
Right.
That's kind of sort of maybe what got him into trouble to begin with. So, and again, it's been a really long time since he's pitched. It's been almost 2 years. He pitched the last game of the 19 season was the last time he pitched competitively. So, I think he's more of a question mark than he is an X factor right now. I mean, I think he can be, what you're saying, but a lot has to go right for that to happen.
Right. Now, counterpoint to, we're talking about the time off and the contract and whatnot. Do you think he will want to make that move to the bullpen if needed, of course, because he wants to prove himself so he can get a contract, whether or not it's he would have to think about, obviously, if he wanted to move to a bullpen full time or remain a starter. I'm sure he'd want to remain a starter, but do you think he'd want to at least show that, hey, I still got it, even if it was only for 2 months?
Well, I mean, yeah, he wants to come back and pitch. I don't think there's any question about that. And I think he would definitely make the team better, just with him being out there and that size and personality. I mean, that's intimidating. I've stood pretty close to him when and I'm 6'3" and I'm looking like way up there, at him. So, this is he's got a presence to him. He's a character on top of it, but, that's a good question. I mean, I think he wants to, if he's going to go to free agency, he doesn't, the Mets offer him, if let's say the Mets don't offer him a qualifying offer, they offer it and he doesn't take it. If he goes to free agency, he wants to sell himself as a starter. But that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I'm not in his head. I think in an ideal world, he wants 5 years and 100 million. He's not getting 5 years and 100 million though.
Not at this point, no.
He might be, if I were the Mets, actually, I'd offer him the qualifying offer and hope he takes it. Even if that 19 million, it's an overpay or whatever it's going to be next year. You have someone who's his arm is reasonably fresh, short of the Tommy John surgery. And if he's right, he's worth every bit of the 19 million, if not more. So, it's like with Stroman, like he was smart to take the qualifying offer, right? Yes. Noah might be smart to take that. It might be, and then if you're the Mets, I know you asked a different question, but if you're the Mets and you say, okay, well, I need to go out and find a starting pitcher now, because they will need to find starting pitching. They're going to end up paying more than what they would pay Noah through a qualifying offer to get that caliber of pitching. So, right. I think it's in everybody's best interest for a qualifying offer to happen with both of them. But let's say that doesn't happen. I think Noah would ideally want to sell himself as a returning from Tommy John, elite starting pitcher. I think that's where his value is. I think he's got a proven value as a starting pitcher, as an elite starting pitcher. He has to get back to that point, certainly, but right. He could take an under market deal, for a couple of years, if it's not going to be with the Mets, perhaps elsewhere. He'll still be, pretty young if he were to, young enough to hit free score and if he pitches well, score big, he could still do that. So it's a good question. But I think right now for the Mets, they have to figure out where he's going to fit when he comes back, if he comes back, right? He's not coming back to me until, he proves he's here, until he's actually out there. He's not back, so, and I've said that since February. I've said, and people have, basically crapped down my throat when I've said this, but even when he was on track to return in June, I would say, look, this is easier said than done. Anything you get from him is a bonus, right? Ended up being right, so whatever you get from him is a bonus right now. Same with Carrasco. So let's just see where we're at in a month, because I think we'll have some idea of whether or not he's coming back by then.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. He will be an important piece once he comes back, if he comes back, but we'll see what happens. That's all I've got though. The Mets have a hell of a push ahead. Trade deadline is on Friday, July 30th, 4 p.m. And I know you and I will probably both be sweating ourselves until then, see if they make a deal,
Well,
but we'll see what happens.
I think though, for the first time in a long time, and I'm including 2015 into this, they're heading into the trading deadline as in the driver's seat, right? They're in first place by not a little bit. They have 4 or 5 game lead. They have a 5 game lead over Atlanta. The pressure's on the Braves this week, specifically on the field, right? It's a 5 game series. I mean, they can't not get 4 of these games if they have a prayer going into the pennant race, right?
Correct.
So, and I mean, I think they may have somewhat of a pitching advantage since TBA is pitching for the Mets in 2 of these games. But the Mets have proven, if anything, they know how to overcome adversity, and they're at home where they're incredibly good. Where they're pitching, no matter who pitches, is incredibly good, and most nights, minus last night, of course.
Yes.
And so the pressure's on Atlanta. I'm not saying the Mets should, cakewalk through the next 5 games specifically, but Atlanta's got to win. It's on Atlanta. So let's see how they respond. They're going to struggle without Acuna, as good as Freeman's been lately. Without Freeman's eventually going to cool off. So of course he always destroys the Mets, but
Right.
without Acuna, really, I mean, it's more than just his bat. I mean, he's, a 5-tool phenomenon, and they're sorely going to be lacking that, and it's going to hurt. I don't see how they can survive without him. I mean, he's an MVP
Yes.
for them, as far as I'm concerned. So we'll see.
I agree.
What else can I say? We'll see.
Very important 5 game series, which me and my brother will be out on Wednesday. I think we're seeing
okay.
Tyler Migo, so that'll be
Oh,
fun.
good. Yeah.
Michael Barron, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey,
Love the Mets talk. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week. I know this is on Monday. Usually they're on Tuesdays, so have to wait an extra day. My apologies, I know, but timely piece here. And yeah, can't wait to see y'all next week. I'm out.